Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/WeHaveWays. Achtung, welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, and James Holland, the Second World War podcast for all your World War II needs. I'm going to be honest, I'm still feeling a bit ragged after the weekend of We Have Ways Fest. Does that make you, Jim?
Yeah, I am a bit. Well, I'm still on cloud nine about it. I thought it was terrific. But we're going to talk to John about that, aren't we, shortly, which will then, the way things work out, that'll probably come out before this one does.
Exactly.
It'll be a kind of completely bonkers introduction.
So what we... well... part of the course. So what we thought we'd do is do one of our... We've both got this absolutely extraordinary World War II Day by Day, published by, what is it? It's Dorian Kindersley. This was £25 when it came out. It wouldn't be now, would it? Blimey.
No, it's got to be at least 35 now, hasn't it?
Listen to it. There you go. It's a vast tome, and it's the Second World War, day by day. So we thought we'd do, periodically, if you're new to the podcast, this is what we sometimes do. And if you are new, welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. And hopefully you've done it via the Apple subscription, if you're boxing clever. But basically, what we do occasionally is pick the events of the week that we're in 80 years ago to have a little look at what's going on. Because one of the things, of course, about the Second World War business is there's an awful lot going on everywhere all at once.
Suddenly, it's all kicking off all at the same time.
Well, and in recent episodes, we have talked an awful lot about Northwest Europe and about Italy, but there's a hell of a lot else going on.
Well, to be fair, we've only talked up to Italy up to the fall of Rome on the 4th of June, rather than beyond that. And actually, I was thinking yesterday, gosh, maybe one not for this year, but... at some point we should do a whole thing on the Gothic line and the battles north of Rome and the final battles and partisan war. And every so often I kind of think to myself, God, are we going to run out of steam on this? And then I realise, no.
No.
Yes.
And I mean, this is all the thoughts that were coming to my mind during the... Anyway, right, so, what's
we're not going to talk too much about Normandy because we've done that. We're not going to talk about the Hitler plot because we talked about that. Yeah. That's also going on. But actually... you might think those are the two biggies, but actually there's a heck of a lot else going on. We're not talking about Guam either.
Because you've just done that. But well, first of all, we could start with there's a bit of politics here, which is the row between the Soviet Union and the London-based Polish government in exile. Because the Soviets, on the 21st of July 1944, announced their intention to set up a committee of national liberation that's basically their Poles. So the Russians have decided that their Poles are going to be the people who are going to run Poland when Poland is liberated. I'm using that word advisedly.
Yeah, with an ahem beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. And the London Poles obviously think that this is a puppet organisation. But their problem is, of course, that if anyone's going to get to Warsaw first, it is the Soviet Union and not the Poles in London, right?
To the extent that... by the 31st of July, they're only 12 miles from Warsaw.
That's right. Because Bagratin has been rolling since June, the 22nd of June, and has burst through vast areas of the Eastern Front.
I mean, it's amazing. 450 miles in 5 weeks.
It's mad. It's completely crazy.
Yeah, but everything on the Eastern Front is different to everything on the Western Front or the Southern Front or in the Pacific or...
in terms of densities and stuff,
space and
space and everything, exactly. And the Germans have also fallen into a big Soviet deception about exactly what their intentions are going to be around Bagratin and sort of lunged in the wrong direction, all this sort of stuff. So, but it means they're in Estonia, they're in Latvia, they've taken Belarus, they've taken Ukraine, and they're in Poland, they're almost in East Prussia, and essentially they're on the verge of taking Warsaw. So, as you said, Jim, on the 31st of July, they're in Wołomin, which is 12 miles east of the Polish capital.
And they've taken Brest-Litovsk.
Yes, Brest-Litovsk, of course. Yes.
Which was one of the first objectives, wasn't it?
And famous for the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk at the end of the First World War. When
was that as well?
Well, not quite the end of the First World War. When the Russians step out of the war. Across the Vistula, to the south. So they're over the main water obstacle.
Well, no, they haven't got over the Vistula. That's the whole point. They haven't got past that yet.
Well, they are to the south. They've crossed the Vistula at Sunday.
Okay, but not in the centre, not in Rokossovsky's stretch.
No. But this is the point, though. They're making insane progress.
Yeah.
And if you're the Germans, I mean, we're here. Here we are again, having this. We're going to end up saying this again, aren't we? I'd give up about now if I were you. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Do you know what? Pull the plug.
Pull the plug on it.
Pull the plug on it.
Pull the plug. It's over.
But the tragedy is you're just about to have the Warsaw Uprising, and this is based on the assumption that the Red Army's going to out, and they don't. They stand off.
Yep.
No, so that's August for you.
And are able to say that they're doing that because they've advanced 450 miles and they need a pause. And that is the way the Soviets tend to do things, isn't it? They build up a great head of steam and then steamroller on and then stop and reorganise and start again.
But they don't allow the Allies to use airfields and supply that. So they have to do these. The Allies have to resupply Warsaw from Italy.
Yeah. God, I mean, that's inconvenient, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
I mean,
it's certainly not very convenient.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
You've also got Majdanek.
Oh, yeah.
Being liberated, in inverted commas.
Yeah. Also known as Lublin. That is absolutely horrendous what they discover there. And this is
gas chambers.
Well, gas chambers and crematoria that can't keep up with the gas chambers, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's discovered the Deputy Camp Commandant, Anton Ternes, fails to remove most of the incriminating evidence of war crimes. He's executed at the end of the year. They deal with him very quickly on the
they do, yeah.
In an early trial, and he's hanged by the crematoria.
But it's the first one of its type. It's the first death camp to be overrun.
Yeah. And it's not just full of Jews, it's full of people from all over the Soviet Union as well, isn't it? So
yes, that's horrific.
Absolutely horrific. And there's a memorial there, and there's the site there, and a mausoleum, and all this sort of stuff. Now they're using Cyclone B there. They're using, it's most definitely a death camp. There's no two ways about it.
No two ways about it. It's a death camp, not a concentration camp.
Yeah.
A charnel house of horror.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because this is the sort of beginning of these discoveries, isn't it? That it's the Soviets doing it, I think, is really, really interesting, isn't it? Because after all, in April the following year, when the Allies British and Americans start discovering them in Germany, it kind of galvanizes the men. I mean, after all, it's literally the subject of an episode of Band of Brothers, isn't it? Discovering a death camp, why we fight. There's your direct link. I mean, I wonder what there is in the literature from the Soviet point of view of discovering death camps. And
yeah, I just don't know. I mean, obviously, famously they overrun Auschwitz.
Yeah. But if you're a Red Army soldier, you know perfectly well why you're fighting, because the Germans invaded and they've put your land to the sword and they've murdered people and they've raped and pillaged and everything in a war of explicit conquest. I suppose you don't need that in a way that maybe an American soldier would in order to galvanize you, perhaps. I mean, that's a question. Someone out there will know better than us that what this means to Soviet soldiers discovering these camps. I suppose it's, the depravity of Nazism and all that stuff.
There's definitely that. But you're right, the sort of scale of the violence and the horror and the executions and the burning of villages and all the rest of it. I mean, it's not like they don't know about this stuff, is it?
Yeah, precisely. This is it. But this is it on a different industrialized level. And also with its racial component, which after the war, the Soviets play down for their own internal reasons. Right. So as well as that, I mean, what else? This book's amazing.
Well, I think we should certainly look at the Pacific a little bit, just to kind of really ram home the global effect. So Roosevelt is backing the MacArthur plan. So this is we talked about it a little bit with John. This is the kind of, strategic decision making. Do they go to Formosa, now Taiwan, which is the plan favored by Ernest King, who is the Admiral King, who is the head of the US Navy, or do they go with the Philippines plan, which is backed by MacArthur?
MacArthur first, as it were.
Yeah. MacArthur is the army commander and overall American commander in the Pacific, and Roosevelt goes with MacArthur's plan, which actually does seem more sensible than going to Formosa, which I think would have been a very, very big step.
Yeah. But it's difficult, isn't it? Disentangling him from it, isn't it? From the Philippines, because he regards himself as it's his patch, isn't it? It's very interesting that he's such a powerful figure. He can kind of personalize things to this point in a way that that's not happening it's not happening in Western Europe unless you're Charles de Gaulle, right?
Yep.
It's sort of like he's the Filipino de Gaulle or something.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that everyone's got different views. I mean, Nimitz is a bit sort of caught between the two. He's the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet. Halsey, who's one of his kind of, most gung-ho fighting admirals, just wants to get to Okinawa straight away, which is the kind of first major
get it done. Yeah, home
islands of Japan. And get it done. Obviously, that doesn't happen until the 1st of April 1945 in the end. So, none of them are quite clear. I mean, MacArthur argues that it would be dangerous to bypass the Philippines. But in a way, that's kind of nonsense because the Japanese troops on the Philippines are going to be isolated there if you attack Formosa. I mean, how are they going to get there? I suppose they could go down through what is now Vietnam. But, I'm not sure that is the case. I mean, MacArthur wants to get to the Philippines because that's the place he was kicked out of in 1942. Yeah. He's emotionally incredibly tied to it.
Yeah.
And of course, Philippines have been an American territory since wrenched from the Spanish at the end of the 19th century. So although they're kind of, it's absolutely clear that they're independent, that relationship with America is very tight. And it's particularly important to MacArthur. So there are emotional reasons for going. But even so, I think the main reason for not wanting to go into Formosa is it's just such a formidable proposition, which, of course, even today, the Chinese would discover if were they to kind of mount some amphibious assault on the island. I mean, it's a big island. It's a long way from China. It doesn't look it from the maps, but it is. There's a whole host of problems with it. Mind you, I have to say, there's not exactly no problems with attacking Philippines either.
Well, this is the point, though, isn't it? Is that we have talked about the fighting in Manila and how basically it's that thing of the place is destroyed in order to save it, isn't it? It's it's an horrendous business. It's interesting, isn't it? Because this is also the point at which the Americans have kind of made up their minds that China aren't really going to be anything more to do with the war, are they? That they may have backed China up to this point. Chiang Kai-shek may have been someone who was on their Christmas card list, but he isn't really anymore. And they're just going to scale that back, aren't they? And that, of course, sets the scene for post-war China, the communists winning, and the Americans losing all influence in China completely. I mean, it's fascinating because that's the sort of part of the jigsaw in the East that I think sometimes can easily be overlooked. But I mean, it's MacArthur getting his way. It's extraordinary.
I mean, and that leads directly to those iconic photos of him wading ashore on Leyte and the island of Leyte, because of course Philippines is just a massive different islands. And subsequently in January 1944 on Luzon, it's the start of the kamikaze attacks as well, and by the Japanese, and it definitely marks a kind of a new stage. But even so, you can argue about whether MacArthur was right to go to the Philippines. I think they were definitely right not to go to Formosa.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've got to do something. You're there now.
Yeah.
You're in it. You've got the stepping stone.
Well, but this is it, isn't it? Is that also that's imperative of maintaining a strategic momentum?
And MacArthur argues that, there can't be any second betrayal of the Philippines.
Yeah.
Having the first betrayal being the fact that the Americans have been defeated there in 1942. There can't be a second one where they kind of, cast them out on a limb. MacArthur's point is that the Filipinos are kind of, effectively American. They're one of their own, and they need looking after. And if it was an American island, you wouldn't abandon it, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And Roosevelt's convinced by that. So
I mean, it's interesting where that sits with the Atlantic Charter, that attitude to the Philippines, but let's not.
yeah. Let's not worry about that.
Let's not worry
29th
about that.
29th of July, Allied troops land south of Spilje in Albania.
Where's that? Say that again. Spilje.
29th of Spilje.
Spilje.
It's probably Spilje.
Right. Yeah.
Spilje.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the stuff going on in the Balkans, and the same day in Manchuria, the US B-29s bomb the Showa steelworks at Anshan and Taku Harbour.
I mean, God, it is such a global war, isn't it? By this
I know. You start to look at it like that.
New Guinea,
American troops.
US troops down on Middleburg.
Yeah.
And our hero, Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser, succeeds Admiral Sir James Somerville as the C&C of the Royal Navy's Eastern Fleet. Bruce Fraser, of course, hero of the Battle of the Northern Cape.
Yeah, of course. Very, very...
He of square jaw and stout
super
sea-dog
aggressive.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it's one other thing, which is another thing that we never touched on, a spin-off of the July plot.
Mm.
The German armed forces in the Wehrmacht adopt the Nazi salute.
Yes, that's right.
So they've now got to all do the whole kind of Sieg Heil thing.
Yeah, which they haven't had to before.
No.
I think, and we did talk about this with Roger. I think you can't underestimate the effect of the July plot, of its failure, and the sort of bow wave of feeling that it sends right through Nazi Germany in every single way. And also that the Allies look at that and think, well, things falling apart, it's surely only a matter of time. And actually it's having we did discuss with Roger, actually it's had the opposite effect, that it's hardened hearts. It's also made it a very sort of fearful atmosphere. If ever you were at all lukewarm, you're really, you're worried, aren't you? That's the truth. Because, Rommel's out of the picture by now because he's been strafed, hasn't he?
Yes.
The previous week on the 17th.
On the 17th, yeah.
And that's going to spiral into him being, partly, I think, a product of him he now is twiddling his thumbs because he's injured. Yeah. Is how the finger of suspicion...
Well, he's not twiddling anything. He's lying on a bed nearly dying.
Yes, but afterwards. And
yes.
Afterwards, that then leads to him having to kill himself. You get the feeling if he was still at the front in Normandy and hadn't been injured, that finger of suspicion may never have come to him, especially if he'd been, acting with dash and vigour, although he wouldn't have been acting with dash and vigour because they're in a vice, aren't they, the Germans in Normandy? It's
also going to be a key moment in Jack Tanner Book 6.
Is it? Oh,
yeah,
you said, yeah.
I mean, it's got to be done. I had Jack Tanner nearly assassinate and nearly snipe Rommel.
Really?
In 1940 in the Battle of the counterattack at Arras. He's just about to do it. He managed to creep up onto that hill, that farm where Rommel personally takes over the firing of the 3 points, what do you call them, 88mm anti-tank guns. And Rommel gets up there and he's got a clear shot and he can see his head. And
why doesn't he?
His mate Sykes says he can't do that. He's just think what that'll do if you take him out there and then. And he goes, "Oh, shut up, Stan." And he's just about to shoot it, and the guy next to him, his aide, moves in between Rommel and him just as he's about to take a shot. So had he not been delayed, he'd have had him.
Oh, I hate it when that happens in fiction.
Yeah. So Rommel keeps coming back. I've had great fun with him. But anyway, that's purely fiction.
It's
not to be confused with the real events that are taking place. So we should have a look at Vercors, actually. We should have a look at the one of the things we haven't really touched on, and we might do this a bit. We're going to get Tom Petch on, aren't we? Talk about the SAS operations in France in 1944, which I think will be really,
isn't that all really, 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 really interesting?
But we should do a whole episode on the resistance and stuff, which we just haven't done yet. But we'll just touch on this. I mean, it is really interesting that in the first part of 1944, numbers of the milice, which the creation of the milice is only in 1943 anyway, I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah. So in war movies about resistance, it's always sort of slime-ball milice types. Kind of Weasley types in villages who kind of betray the girl or whatever, or the hero. But actually, there were lots of them, and they were growing in number, and actually more milice than there were resistors, members of the resistance in the first 6 months of 1944. Obviously, all that changes after 6th of June, because suddenly, the key ingredient of resistance is not only hope, it is a path through. If you feel suddenly one side's going to win rather than the other, then that definitely kind of stiffens your resolution, I think. And makes you feel more inclined to back an unspeakably dangerous organisation where...
Yeah, recruitment goes up after Overlord, doesn't it? That's the point. It's that more people are joining, more people are into it. And there's an atrocity on Bastille Day by the milice in Paris at La Santé prison. They kill a load of prisoners. And I mean, I think the thing to bear in mind is that also the milice, they occupy this strange place. They're not bound by law. They're allowed to do what they want.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. Anyway, I mean, Vercors is this area.
Well, should we take a break and then come back to Vercors? Because there's quite a lot to talk about with Vercors, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's do that.
Let's do that. Okay. We will be back after a short break to talk about Vercors, which is a fascinating story.
And also a bit of Italy.
And some Italy to do, of course. Okay, we'll see you in a tick.
Hello, everybody. Tom Holland here, the co-host of The Rest is History, with some very, very exciting news. Now, to celebrate this year's Olympic Games, which, of course, are being held in Paris, we thought that we would dive into the story of another period when incredible spectacles were being staged in the French capital to much bloodier effect than anything we will see in the Olympics. And this is the story of the French Revolution. Over the span of 8 episodes running throughout the duration of the Olympics, we'll be looking at the incredible life of Marie Antoinette, the storming of the Bastille, King Louis XVI's attempted escape from Paris with the rest of the royal family, and many more seismic events. So to hear our series on the French Revolution, simply search for The Rest is History wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, and with James Holland. We're going through the events of roughly now 80 years ago. And we've been to the Pacific. We've been to Spilje. We haven't. Allied troops have just landed south of there in Albania.
We need Dominic Sambrit here to help us with our Slavic pronunciations.
Who knew, eh?
Who knew? Yeah.
Who knew?
Quite a dab hand in Sarajevo, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
It's much better than my brother, that's for sure.
Have you been there? Have you been to Sarajevo?
No. I've been to Yugoslavia. I went there in early part of 1989 when before the Civil War broke out. But it was really raw, and you absolutely felt it was round the corner.
Right. I went in 2003, 2, something like that, to entertain the troops. So we went to Banja Luka, Sipovo, and can't remember the other place. And we went to Sarajevo. We went on the international, the base on the airport at Sarajevo, which was fascinating because everyone had gone into their national stereotypes. So the Italian PX stores are really great barbers with a tailor. The Americans had like a Pizza Hut and a Burger King. The Irish had the best bar on the base. The Germans, it was all military uniforms.
Yeah.
And the Brits, it was a sort of baked bean shop. But
But I remember going to Dubrovnik and going on, and just, I was 18 at the time.
Yeah.
Having my year out between school and
uni. Yeah.
And I just remember just thinking, these are the most beautiful women ever in the entire world. And going on islands where there were lots of sort of young Croatians sunbathing topless and being very...
Oh, my God.
And just sort of trying not to look too hard. I was with 2 lads, and we were struggling a bit. They weren't interested in us, by the way.
Of course not. Tremendous. Well, no, we were. We there was the Parliament building that had been shot through the middle by Serb tanks. That was quite a striking thing, and that was still all smashed up. And on the sort of street guide, there was it's not everywhere you go where there's a thing that says "scene of massacre" in the like post office bus station. Scene of massacre. It's quite strange. Yeah. Anyway.
But the other thing about it is that also I've got absolutely good to go. I've got a series on Yugoslavia. The notes are done.
Really?
Everything. Yeah. Partisan war in Yugoslavia and everything.
Tremendous. Oh,
whenever we want to do it, we can do it.
We could do it. Right. But for now, we're talking about the Vercors, which is the most, appalling cock-up, isn't it? Let's be honest now.
It's the most appalling cock-up, but it's also kind of, haven't the Germans got better things to do?
Well, yes.
Sort of. But as ever, no, they haven't. Clearly.
But this is also the thing I think we've talked about, that people who know, been listening to the Normandy stuff, is that the Germans' way of working out priorities is very, very strange. And to say the least, isn't it? So what this story is, it's the Battle of Vercors, which is in July and August of 1944, if you want to call it that, which is between the FFI, the Maquis, and the Germans up on the Massif du Vercors, which is a plateau.
Yeah, and let me just say, this is a bit like a whole bunch of rebels suddenly decide they're going to make a republic out of, I don't know, Ben Nevis or something.
Yeah.
And they sit on that. They sit on that, and they go, right, we're now the Republic of Ben Nevis, which for those who don't know is the largest mountain in the UK, or some remote mountain in America or something. I mean, it's sort of it's right. It's south of Grenoble by a stretch. It's in the Alps,
in the east of France.
Southeast France, in the Alps. It is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad.
Not a million miles from Lyon, I suppose.
Yeah. But near Grenoble, and it's high ground. And one of the important things is the terrain. So they obviously, to them it appeals that they take up this sort of the Vercors Massif. The clue's in the name. It's this great big sort of hill formation. The idea is they're going to sit up there, but it's made of very, very porous rock. So there's not the opportunity for surface water to gather, and getting water there is very, 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 very difficult if you're going to stick around. It's limestone, and there's caves and caverns, but there's not very much in the way of surface water, streams and so on. So one of the things that then happens when the fighting develops is the Germans work this out quickly enough. And Grenoble also has a great big garrison nearby, and there's a Luftwaffe base as well. So, yes, they've picked this incredible mountain massif thing to have as a redoubt, but also it's not far from the enemy. This is all so weird, isn't it? It's nuts, basically. So what you have is a series of plans. Jean Moulin's involved in the sort of the beginnings of this.
No, he's not. He's already gone by the time.
No. But the year before, there's Plan Montagnard, which he's involved in, which
I see. Yeah,
Moulin and Delestraint approve. And then Camaetz, did you realise that Camaetz is Michael Morpurgo's uncle or something? You know that?
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I absolutely did not know.
Well,
that.
I was poking around in this. I discovered that. It's like, what?
That's absolutely bonkers.
It's nuts. It's something like that. I can't remember exactly
It's a bit like that person the other day who contacted me and said that her grandfather was Windy Gale's driver or something.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that's much better. The Michael Morpurgo one.
Yeah, Francis Camaetz. Yeah, that's right. His because he went on to become a teacher and all that sort of stuff. Yes, he's Michael Morpurgo's uncle.
Yeah, good looking fella, Tash.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's the real deal. Involved with Christina Scarbeck and all that sort of stuff. So
why not?
Why not? And good luck to you. I mean, you're in a tight spot, aren't you? You might as well. And
yes, because when he lands in France, his aircraft crashes.
Yeah, I know.
It is so mad. Some of the things that happen to people in the war, in which they kind of walk out of, and what they do. And
well, Camaetz is an amazing figure, isn't he? Because he's 6'3", he's taller than everyone else. He's got great big feet, so he's known as Bigfoot, and all this sort of stuff. And speaks French in an appalling Belgian accent.
Yes, I'd say obviously inspiration for the policeman.
Yeah, exactly. And
have you made a boom?
But the rest of the resistance, like, oh god, this guy's just it's going to attract trouble. His jockey circuit and are all part of it, are all tied up in it. But one of the things that happens is the people around Vercors, the Maquis are around there. They've decided that what they're going to do, they know there's going to be an invasion. They think there's probably going to be one from the north. They think there might also be one from the south, but they don't know which is going to go first, but probably the first one, right? And when D-Day happens, they are not on the sort of list of activate yourself now resistance people messages that the BBC transmit. They're not on the list. So they just assume, well, they've obviously left us off. There's been an oversight. They do mean us.
Yeah,
they don't, and also they know perfectly well there is no invasion coming because no one in Algeria is saying, stuff's underway. Invasion preparation for the south is happening. No one in Algiers is saying that's going to happen. So there's this very strange thing where they activate themselves. Huet is the commander of the Vercors Massif, François Huet, who's appointed by Marcel Decour as the chief of staff for the FFI in the Rhone-Alps region, and they pronounce this Republic of Vercors.
Yeah. And
they say, and the thing is Decour, who's set this thing in motion, has visited Algiers and he's been talking to de Gaulle's, one of de Gaulle's confidants, Jacques Soustel, and he thinks, what we need to do is we need to prepare an airfield space and we need to be ready to receive 4,000 paratroopers. I mean,
But the Maquis of Vercors have already got 3,000.
Yes, I know, but the big they're expecting like some sort of airdrop that will come.
This happens time and time again in 1944, where there is this massive disconnect between because if you're kind of head of 3,000 resistance or maquisards in the mountains, you're going to think that those numbers, your knowledge of that ground is going to give you an unbelievable false sense of security. You're going to think you're the top dog around there, and you're also going to think you're pretty bloody important. And you've got your handlers, you've got Komertz and Zamfielding and others, and they're saying, yes, we're going to support you and sort of big it up. And so you kind of get this, you get this feeling that the whole weight of the Allied air, because the Allies, and you've seen airplanes flying over the Alps, so you know they've got this huge arsenal, you know they've got it in them, and you're thinking you're going to be far greatly supported than you actually are. And there's lots of maquisards, lots of resistance groups who aren't going to be supported at all. No.
And Komertz says to them on D-Day, says 2 months, at least 2 months, cool your jets, wait and see, the moment's coming.
Yeah.
And then they've got about 4,000 people up on the Massif. And then the US AAF start doing daylight supply drops across southern France. So they do one down near where I'm going on holiday week after next.
I bet they don't do as many as they say they're doing.
Of course not. But they do a big drop. They do a big drop on Bastille Day at Vercors with a load of B-17s. I mean, it's and there's photographs of that, which is it's quite something. So great big daylight supply drop. That what's that going to do? And it's 72 B-17s, and it's anti-tank weapons, bazookas and stuff. Well, I mean, obviously, what that's going to do is going to boost Maquis morale and also say to the Germans, they're over here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not good, is it? Because up to now, the RAF have been dropping weapons by night. So it's less sort of obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you get a further mission, Allied missions sent. So Eucalyptus is sent on the 26th, 27th of June. Then there's a second OSS mission sent the next day, 2 days later, rather. And the 3rd of July, they pronounced the Free Republic of Vercors.
Yeah, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
I mean, completely nuts. And then the Germans go, all right, if you insist.
Yes, and Christina Granville, Claire Mully's friend.
Yeah.
Christina Skarbeck.
Yeah.
She's also involved in this, isn't she?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, she's tangled up in it. Because she's a Komertz association. So what the Germans start doing is they start putting planes over the place to recce it, have a good look. And London and Algiers both say, get ready, the Germans are coming for you. It's going to be a really, really, really big attack.
Yeah. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of them, aren't there?
Well, I know, this is the thing. So on the 15th of July, they blow up a tunnel on the Grenoble side and the bridge near over the Isère. So they cut them off on the east and on the west. And they've been, in the meantime, the Maquis have been building this airfield. It's completely mad, hoping for Dakotas. Then on the 21st of July, they see 20 planes coming with gliders, and the Maquis are like, brilliant, Allies are here. And it's not. It's 200 SS airborne soldiers.
Is it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Are they Gebirgsjäger? What? Who are they? Who are these troops?
I don't know.
Because I bet, okay, they might... Because it always says SS troops, but there aren't any Waffen-SS divisions.
Well, then maybe it's not. Maybe it's Gebirgsjäger. But what you've got is Lieutenant General Karl Ludwig Pflaum.
Pflaum.
No, Pflaum. P-F-L-A-U-M. Pflaum. He's basically, they do an insertion by airborne soldiers near the village of Vazieux, and then he sends in thousands and thousands of men. I mean, 10,000 men are sent in by Pflaum.
That just seems ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're French, just leave the Maquis there if they're stuck on the top of a mountain.
Yeah, cut them off, isolate them. And the Maquis are smashed to pieces. And they withdraw into the woods and all this sort of stuff.
And they massacre whole load of villages, don't they? Torch lots of villages and usual thing.
Yeah, exactly. They're scouring the woods in sections. There's Maquis drowned trying to cross the river and all this sort of thing. And in the battle, 65 Germans are killed, 133 are wounded. The Maquis lose 639 killed. And then you get into reprisals.
Okay, here we are. It's Reserve Gebirgsjäger Regiment 1. There you go. And it's the 157th Reserve Division. So these are divisions which are working up.
Yeah.
So there'll be stuff full of Ost battalions.
Yeah.
In fact, wasn't...
First 98th, second 98th, 99th, 900th and Reserve Gebirgsjäger Regiment 1 and 2 Reserve Infantry Battalions from the Reserve Grenadier Regiment. So, yeah, they're all...
Yes, and Kampfgruppe Zabel, which is 1 infantry battalion of the 9th Panzer Division and 1 Ost battalion. There you go. A Feldgendarme and police battalion. So it's the 19th SS Police Regiment. That sounds about right.
Yeah, Fallschirmkampfgruppe Schäfer. Yeah.
Yeah, so they sound like quite low order, low grade troops, to be fair.
But still...
They're going to be better than the resistance, aren't they?
They are going to be better than... exactly, yeah.
Because they're going to have some artillery and anti-tank guns and
there's some
cannons.
French volunteers with them, of course.
Of course. Do you know what? I can say? I mean, it's great to do kind of this in a very sort of brief, kind of touchy thing, but just touching it. Yeah. This would make a great two-parter.
It would, wouldn't it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. It's horrendous. The recriminations are awful. It's people being
we don't do much on the French resistance, folks. We're great to do this.
Yeah, people being castrated and disemboweled, and one girl left with her intestines wound around her neck, and all this absolutely horrendous.
No. Okay, maybe we shouldn't do it. No, we shouldn't.
Shy away. No.
The horrors of war.
No. And Kamertz afterwards says, the notion that there was any mistake in timing, I reject entirely. I think the invasion in Normandy was too delicate and too much in the balance to risk anything. And that Eisenhower had to play every card he had. And so he told all the French resistance to come out and fight as much as they could. So he's like, basically, Kamertz in the end is saying, well, them's the breaks, that's war. But I mean, it's a very... French people have to, the people responsible for it have to say, was it a good idea, a bad idea? Politically, where does it sit? Is it a victory? Is it a failure? What is it? I mean, that's the thing. It's a bitter business, isn't it?
It's an unholy mess by the sounds of things, and just horrific. We should mention very quickly that on the 18th of July, Japan's Prime Minister and Chief of Staff General Hideki Tojo resigns. Yeah. And this is also a big moment in the Italian campaign, because this on the 21st of July is when the decision is made to withdraw the 7 divisions from the Allied armies in Italy and move them over to Operation Dragoon. And this has been hovering over ever since the Tehran conference, very beginning of December 1943, when Stalin has said, I really think you should go for Normandy, but I also think you should do a 2-pronged attack and do one in southern France. And those who say this was a terrible mistake kind of point out to the fact that, just had this great victory in Rome and momentum is with them. The German 14th Army in Italy is on the run and completely mauled. That the 10th Army is really struggling, that Italy is sucking up more troops than the Germans can afford. And actually clearing the whole Italian peninsula would give the Allies huge flexibility, because they could turn right through the Ljubljana Gap into the Balkans, or they could turn left over into France. Either way, but the die has been cast, and Operation Dragoon, which was originally Operation Anvil, has been kicked down the road, and in March the decision is made to kind of postpone it, not indefinitely, but to some point beyond D-Day. It's not going to be done concurrently with D-Day anymore, so that gives the Allied forces in Italy a massive kind of respite. But then it kind of, once Rome falls and D-Day happens, then it's kind of it's accelerated again. And the Americans and Jumbo Wilson, who is the British Supreme Allied Commander in the Mediterranean, all think that it should happen. And the truth is, it should happen. It's one of those things that you really want to do, both. You absolutely want to exploit success when you have it, but you need that supply line for France. France is the main event. That's been agreed a long time ago.
Yeah.
Normandy is the main event, and you need that supply line. I mean, because of the kind of, it takes such a long time to get the River Scheldt free and all the rest of it. Just think of all that supply line coming up through France and coming from Normandy, and think about supply lines coming up through southern France and actually supporting, Third Army and all the rest of it. I mean, it is really, really important for getting into Germany, for as I say, keeping that logistical base, giving an extra bit of flexibility is really, really important. The truth is, by the stage of war, as we pointed out earlier on in this episode, there's just so much going on in the war that you have to prioritize. And of course you should support Italy. And it's a terrible thing that they've got to take away these 7 divisions. But what do you do? I mean, you can't be everywhere all the time.
No.
And choices have to be made, and very difficult choices.
And also, in a way, you could argue if one of the purposes that, you argue, fod your airfields, draw Germans away.
Get Rome, obviously. So they've done all that.
So in a way, you've kind of you've achieved what you've set out to achieve, haven't you? In Italy.
I mean, it's an interesting period because what you've got sort of pushing 14th Army, German 14th Army in complete disarray, just streaming north. You've got 10th Army moving away to the kind of to north east. But what you will have from now on is you'll have the 14th Army and the 10th Army side by side, which they've never been up until this point. So you've got these two armies side by side. And then you've got them sort of trying to regain their balance. And they've got these kind of little lines going up, a bit like they had, from Naples on the way up to kind of, the Bernhard line. And you have this 10-day battle, the Trasimeno line battle, which is that's kind of about 10 miles, and it's quite kind of lumpy country. It's kind of sort of rolling hills to the kind of immediate west of Lake Trasimeno, which is a sort of sizable lake in the sort of middle of Italy and kind of sort of southern Tuscany, Umbria kind of way. And they get past that, and this is, for those who've read the War in the Val d'Orcia, Aris Arrigo's one, this is the key moment. And it's southern Tuscany, and they kind of break through that. And then at the very beginning of August, you've got the fall of Florence. So you've got this kind of battle going up through Trasimeno, and then throughout July, you've got battling through the rest of Tuscany, really, and up the Tuscan coast. And that's where the bulk of the fighting is taking place. And it's pretty vicious fighting and pretty brutal fighting. And actually, again, it's the Fallschirmjäger who end up kind of defending, holding on to onto Florence and blowing up all the bridges apart from the Ponte Vecchio.
It's absolutely amazing that they
blow up the buildings either end of the Ponte Vecchio, so it's blocked. But all the bridges over the River Arno.
In a way, it's amazing they don't blow that up, given their attitudes up to that point.
Well, Kesselring, in one of his kind of sort of look at me, I'm a big man kind of moment, says it's going to be an open city, and we're not going to contest it, and then they promptly contest it and blow up all the bridges. So but it doesn't get bombed, to be fair.
Right. Well,
an awful lot of pit snipers in upper windows and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that sort of stuff.
And partisans getting in the way.
Yeah. Well, which is a big part of the Italian story.
Yes, indeed. So that's what's going on in the last 10 days of July, really.
Yeah, the last 10 days of July in the Second World War, in World War II. And we hope we've taken you enough around the world. Certainly, it is always that thing that each one of these is an entire... I mean, we haven't done Bagratine properly, have we, at any point?
Well, we need to do a big thing on Bagratine. We need to do a big thing on the Italian campaign north of Rome. We definitely need to do a kind of two-parter on Vercors. It's just be such a good one to do. And we need to do general piece on the resistance. So the good thing is the anniversaries of next year only take us up to May and August. And then we're kind of wondering what we do when we hit the next cycle of anniversaries. So I think we've just answered our question.
Oh, there we go. Brilliant.
So in the next part of next year, kind of look forward to that series on Bagration.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget, if you don't want to listen to the adverts, you can always go to our Apple channel and become officer class, and also have everything curated for you in order, which is, I think, quite under subject matter. So I think quite a useful thing. Or join our Patreon. We Have Ways to Make You Talk Patreon, where shortly we will be putting up content from the recent We Have Ways Festival at Black Pit the other day, where all of those talks will be a chance to listen again, or the listen to the ones you missed, because I missed a ton. I missed a ton. I've got to catch up on all those. And of course, just in case you haven't already had enough of Al and I doing podcasts, we've also got World War II, Walking the Ground, which is now our new YouTube channel. And the first series is all set kind of all around D-Day and Normandy, and basically has Al and I kind of crewing around, pretending to lob grenades at bridges and all sorts of stuff. Well, you did that. I basically looked on.
You remained a little bit censorious.
I was awestruck at your ability to get stuck in.
Yeah, very good. Anyway, if you want to see us sort of on location, that's how you find us. World War II, Walking the Ground on
That's
YouTube.
Exactly it. Yeah. Right. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you again very soon. Cheerio.
Cheers.